Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, whatever it is. This is business strategies for small independent developers. My name is Joe Cieplinski. I want to start off by thanking Michael in particular and the entire Devox staff here. It's been a very warm welcome. This is my first visit to Belgium. Hopefully it will not be my last. And this incredible conference, I hope you're all enjoying so much. I guess I should start off by talking a little bit about myself since I'm new here. You folks probably don't know me. About 2008, right around the release of the iPhone SDK, Android was on the rise. It became pretty obvious to most of us in the development community that mobile was going to be a big thing. And to two friends of mine who I'd known from my school days, who were still living in Philadelphia, I was in San Francisco at the time, they decided they were going to go ahead and try to start a company on their own and start building their own apps. And they formed a company called Bombing Brain Interactive. And shortly after, they realized they were two programmers that they desperately needed a designer. And so I got an email one day saying, hey, I've heard you started dabbling in graphics about 10 years ago. Do you want to come and join us? And I started off by making a few icons for them, and then next thing you know, I'm working on their website, and next thing you know, I'm helping them build their next app, and so on and so forth. And it's been a great relationship. We've been working that way ever since. So we together have built a number of apps, all on the iOS and Mac OS platforms so far. Our most popular one, if you know us at all, would be our Teleprompter app. It's called Teleprompt Plus. It's been extremely successful for us on the iOS market, particularly on the iPad. There's also an iPhone and a Mac version as well. Then something happened about 2.5 years ago or so. Gene, one of my two partners in the business, said, you're a really great designer, Joe, but I bet someday you're going to start wanting to code yourself. You just are asking the right questions, you're curious, you're always wondering how things work, and I bet you're going to want to get into this development thing. And I kind of took that as a challenge. And so for the next year or so, I spent building my first app for iOS, and I called it X to Y. It's a simple calculator for aspect ratios. And it's baby stuff, believe me. But it was a really great adventure for me. It was my first foray into real code. I say real code because I had done some HTML, I'd done a little bit of JavaScript, but it wasn't anything serious prior to this. And so this was my first app, and I put it out on the store myself because I was mostly not really interested in necessarily making lots of money with it. I sort of wanted to do it as an intellectual challenge. To see if I could better myself, make myself a better member of the team by learning some new skills. And that did so well for me that I ended up making a second app called Finn, which I just released 2 weeks ago. And I'm actually using it right now to time my talk. And I have another clock there too, which is great. But this is a timer that's meant specifically for speakers, just a big number in front of you so you always know how much time you have left. So I dabbled in my own apps, and I started building my own apps just recently in the last couple of years. And another interesting thing I wanted to tell you about myself is that in the last year I also started a podcast. I call him a friend now, but at the time I barely knew him. My co-host Charles Perry was a developer, an independent developer out in Indiana, and I had met him at a conference like this in the States. And he basically approached me after just going out and hanging out at a conference. A couple months later, I got an email from him saying, hey, did you ever think about starting a podcast? And so we decided to start our own podcast. Why not? I love podcasts. I've been listening to podcasts forever. And I'd always kind of in the back of my head wanted to do one myself. And we called it Release Notes. And it's basically, our tagline is everything but the code. We don't talk about code, we talk about business. And this is the real reason why I'm here. In some ways, you might think of me as sort of a fish out of water, right? What is this iOS guy from the States, who's a designer mainly, not even a developer, doing at Devox, right? And when I was first asked to be here, that was my first question, like, what am I going to talk to these folks about? But then I realized quickly that what the folks at Devox had in mind was that I'd talk to you a little bit about business, because we have been fairly successful with our apps, and so hopefully, and on our podcast, we're constantly talking about principles that small business owners, people that are just trying to make a go of things on the various app stores out there in mobile, and what we've learned and what we can try to hopefully impart on others. So that's what I'd like to talk to you mainly about today is building your business. And I use the word building for a reason. It's not something you just turn on one day and it just works. Some people get lucky, I guess, and they make millions of dollars right out of the gate. But a business really is something that you have to build over time. and it's something that has to be carefully constructed and planned. It's not something that just sort of happens to you. I'm not necessarily talking about a giant corporation. We're not necessarily building the next Microsoft and the next Google, although you never know. That could happen if you really planned and really worked your way, if that was your goal. I've always been more interested in sort of the mom and pop store kind of business, what is often referred to now as a lifestyle business. Something to pay the bills that isn't this, okay? You've all seen the movie Office Space. Now, lots of folks love going to a job every day. They love the security of a big business, that steady paycheck, and all of that. And I liked it too, but I couldn't stand being here. I couldn't stand being in the cubicle and dealing with all of the craziness that happens in every office, no matter how many people I talk to, whatever the company you're working in, no matter how great the company is and how much they serve roast pheasant for lunch, you're going to have your complaints when it comes to dealing with bureaucracies and dealing with TPS reports and all other crazy stuff, right? So my goal in business is not necessarily to be super rich. It's not necessarily to build Adobe, for 2014. What I want to do is just not go out of business and not have to go back to that cubicle, okay? So if I can live on my own work and my own apps, and I can work from my home, and I can do all the things that I want to do and stay away from the office for the rest of my life, that's okay with me, all right? So and my two business partners fortunately feel the exact same way. One time I asked Gene, I said, what's the ideal number of employees do you think for our company? And he said 3. Right? We've already got 3. Let's stick with the 3. Now, of course, we're talking about like maybe eventually needing 4 and 5. You're going to have to grow a little bit if you want to continue things. But the goal here is never to be a 10,000 person company per se. So how do we do this? How do we stay out of the cubicle forever? So this is actually what I would call a typical sales chart for an app in mobile. You see this giant peak up here? That's when you launched the app and you got all that press, right? And everyone wrote about how cool your app is, and there was buzz around it. All your friends bought it, and you got reviewed and everything else. And maybe you got featured on one of the app stores. And so you get all these great sales, and then a week later it's about half that, and then a week later it's half that, and then boom, boom. And pretty much about 2-3 months out, you're looking at a trickle of sales. Okay, this is considered a success story on at least the iOS App Store, okay? This is the best most apps do. And if this peak is in the millions of dollars, I guess that works until next year or the next year or the next year. The problem with this kind of strategy from a revenue standpoint is that you are having to keep having one of these super high number hits all the time, or eventually you're going to run out of money again and you're going to be back to the cubicle, right? So ideally, if you're starting a business, what you really want to see from revenue from any product is that it grows over time. So that when you come out with version 3 of your app, it actually sells better than version 1 did. That is really rare in the mobile industry. It's really odd, and I think it's because a lot of us are chasing the wrong priorities. Teleprompter Plus has been doing this steadily since we launched it. We're making more money with it now than we did when it first launched. And I've been trying to figure out why that is all this time, and hopefully I've boiled it down to a few things. Now, before I go any further, I do want to stop with a little caveat here and say that this is not, what I'm going to suggest to you moving forward is not the only way to do things. Nothing drives me more crazy than people that say, I know how to be successful, and here you go, just do this path, and anything else you do is wrong. There are a million ways to be successful out there. And so what I'm going to show you now is one way that has sort of kind of worked for me, and hopefully is something to give you food for thought. It is a contrarian opinion. It is not easy. Right? It is full of obstacles, and it's cold and dark, and you're climbing uphill for the most part. I'm not offering you quick riches and success and all that other stuff. And it's not without risk either. I believe my Americans lost that match. I made sure of that. So why is it that, we almost always lose anyway. Why is it that professional footballers and other types of sport, professional sports people make so much money? A lot of people think they make money because they have a talent that nobody else has. Well, they have a talent that few people have, but there are always more people who could play the game than are actually playing. So it's not really their talent that's getting them there. It's part of it. Believe me, I couldn't do that. All right, most of us couldn't do that. But the ones who make it are the ones who risk everything to get there. They're the ones who didn't think, well, if this doesn't work out, I'll go be a rocket scientist. Okay, they spend all of their time on the field, they spent all of their time playing, and they played their hearts out, and they put all of their efforts into it. And it was a huge risk, right? Same thing goes in the music industry. Now, I love the Scorpions as much as the next guy, okay, but none of these guys was going to be a college professor if music didn't work out, okay? They were likely going to end up flipping burgers or something, but they didn't care. This is what they wanted to do, and they put all of their heart into it. They didn't have a backup plan, okay? And I know that's, you know, the advice your parents always give you is go make sure you have a backup plan. You can go do anything you want. You can try to be an actor if you want, but make sure you have a backup plan. The problem with backup plans and safety nets is that you use them, okay? And so what you need to do, I'm not suggesting you go all out and go crazy, but what I'm saying is that you have to take a risk. There's no such thing as business that's successful if you're not taking some kind of risk. The reason why really rich people get really rich is because they risked everything. They went for something that most people aren't willing to go for, okay? So, moving on. All right, so let's talk a little bit about pricing models, because here's where I'm starting my kind of contrarian look at how to go about having a successful lifestyle business in the App Store. The pricing models really fall into two categories for apps really in mobile nowadays, and this is, you know, perfectly valid whether you're going to be on the Android store or you're making Microsoft apps or you're making iOS apps as well. You know, you could basically go where most people go, which is give it away for free, make it really, really cheap, like $1, you know, or have a freemium model where people use it for a while and then they get to pay a little bit and then pay a little more and then pay a little more until they're, you know, feeding this machine for a long time. So there's the freemium model. So that's sort of one category on one side, and this is where most people go when they're building apps, okay? Unfortunately, this is also where the big companies go, and so I feel like the big companies often are going to beat you at this game. And so what I usually recommend to people is that they think at least about building apps that are more on what I consider a premium scale, all right? What do I mean by the word premium? Well, I don't necessarily mean hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of euros. We're talking about 10 bucks, 15, 20. Okay, not a lot of money, but it's amazing what people will call premium nowadays in the software market. You know, those of us who have been around since longer than, you know, 2000, remember when apps used to cost, you know, hundreds of dollars, $50 even on the mobile. I remember buying Palm apps for 50 bucks and thinking that was cheap. All right, and then suddenly, all of a sudden, charging $1.99 was insane. All right, but there is a space for premium apps, and I hope to make an argument why you might want to consider doing that. So, why would you want to go premium when the rest of the world's going the other way? I love this picture. I took this picture in San Francisco, and I use it because I like to make fun of where I used to live in San Francisco, because even in San Francisco, even the dollar store is $1.25. Everything's more expensive in San Francisco except apps. But what do you think of when you walk into a store like this? Do you guys have kind of dollar store kind of chains here where everything is really, really cheap? It is a huge business in the United States. You know, people go in there, and what are they looking for? They're looking for a bargain. And usually they're looking for something throwaway. I'm going to have a party. I need some party favors to give out to the guests. Or, you know, I'm just looking for cheap plastic, you know, plates and cups and whatever it is. When I walk into this place, I'm not thinking, you know, wow, I'm going to go buy something that makes me extremely happy and that I'm going to love using and that it's going to last for years, right? They're thinking of a throwaway object. And when you price your apps that low, that's pretty much the way your customers see your app. They see it as something like these little goofy hats here, right? And of course, it's an American store. Even in San Francisco, there are American flags in the window. So this is how customers view your product. That's how they view you as a company. And that's okay. Okay, this is a billion-dollar business, right? But you have to be able to say to yourself, do I want my customers to value my product that I spend 9 months, a year, 2 years of my life working on and slaving over? Do I want them to think of my app this way? Or do I want them to think of it more like they do when they walk into a place like Burberry? You know, this is the London store. You walk into this place, and now you feel, oh, whatever I buy in here better last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. You have different expectations, which we'll talk about in a minute, but you also have a different sense. When you walk in here, you expect customer service. You expect the people there to be friendly. You expect that everything in this store is of a certain high quality. I find it ironic that Apple, of all companies, this company that has created this retail chain of the Apple stores that is synonymous with high luxury brand whatever, has done the exact opposite with their App Store. The App Store is much more like a bargain basement, whereas their own personal retail stores are the super high luxury Burberry type places. Really funny. It's a very interesting kind of dichotomy they've got going on there. So I choose to go this way because I want customers to view my products in a different light, in a different way, because that is going to allow me to do a few things differently. For one, I can charge more for my apps. When I have an app that's $10 as opposed to an app that's 99 cents, simple math, okay, I only have to sell one for every 10 that you have to sell. And that sounds like, great, awesome. You just sell more. Obviously, a higher price means it's a little harder to get everyone to buy your app, but I only have to get 1/10 of the number of people. If I have a $20 app, you have to sell 20 copies to catch up to me. Okay, that is, as a small business, as a group of only 3 people, when every sale matters and when you're trying your best to get out there to acquire new customers, it's much better to start thinking in terms of your revenue per sale. In retail, there are lots of ways to measure success, okay? Revenue as a bottom line is great, but numbers that actually matter a lot more in the long run for the health of your business are things like this. Because once you know your revenue per sale, then you can start getting an idea of your margins, right? How much did it cost me to acquire this customer? How much money did I walk away with? It's amazing to me that none of us, almost none of us in business here in the apps world, in mobile, ever think about profit. We're always thinking about revenue and installs. And we're never really thinking about how much money did I actually make. Because at the end of the day, your customers cost you money. Everyone who downloads your app, you had to pay something to get that customer, whether it was time and effort, writing blog posts, trying to get press, or it was an ad that you had to put out, okay, some kind of marketing materials. That costs you money. And then they're going to cost you on the other end, because a percentage of these folks, every one of them, right, some percentage of them is going to contact you for support. And every time you answer an email, think about that person who only gave you 99 cents, which you only got a certain cut of anyway, and now you have to spend an hour answering a support inquiry from them. You lost a lot of money on that customer. How much do you charge an hour, right? So if you're making too little per customer, having more customers is actually a bad thing. So getting millions and millions and millions of people to install your app is only going to lead you to lose money, because every one of your customers is costing you more than you're making. So counterintuitively, the goal here with a premium product is to have fewer customers, right? Fewer customers means you can take care of each one of them better, and they will love you for it, all right? And not only are you having fewer customers, you're looking for different kinds of customers. You're not looking for the same kind of customer that most app developers are looking for. This is the part where everyone starts arguing with me and says, yeah, but there's an app out there that's $1, yours is 10. 90% of the people out there are going to go and just grab the $1 one, or they're going to grab the free one. And I said, that's fine. The 90% of them are not my customers. The 10% who do buy my app are my customers. So what I want to do is get that small percentage of people who are willing to pay, because I can do a lot more with them. For one thing, they don't do stuff like this to me. Right? In the App Store, it's huge, for having good reviews. It's a very, very important part of your business to have reviews. It affects your search results. It affects all kinds of crazy stuff. And people read this stuff, and they get an opinion of your app based on that. And we get few of these because people spent $15 on the app. So they're less likely to think of it as worthless junk, and therefore they're less likely to write a review saying it's worthless junk. It's kind of a strange thing. You might think people get more angry if the app doesn't satisfy them, but no, what our customers do in most cases is they email us directly, privately, and ask us for features that aren't there. And that I can handle a lot better than a publicly scorned review that I can't do anything about. All right, so take a look for a second at one of, as an example, our app, Teleprompter Plus. We did an interesting experiment. This has been out since the iPad was released, and it's been on the store. It was doing well. It was, like, as I said, it was steadily growing, and it was priced at $10 originally. And so we had it going for about a year at that, and we were about to release our 2.0, our big 2.0 release. And so we decided at that point that why don't we try something really strange, and instead of dropping our price, why don't we try raising our price? What's the worst that could happen? Fewer people will buy the app, but we'll make $5 more on every app, so therefore, it'll make up the difference. We thought, if anything, we'd have slightly less sales, but still make more money. But a funny thing ended up happening. We actually, not only did we make more money, we actually had higher sales. More people bought the app at $15 than $10. Part of that was that the iPad was still growing. It was still early enough in the cycle that more people were buying it every month than ever had before. But if anything, it taught us that our price was not an obstacle. The people who need a teleprompter, okay, the people who use our app are generally professionals. They're, small video houses who have to bring in talent, who have to read scripts for commercials and all kinds of other things. They're politicians. Lots of preachers are using our apps. Anyone who has to give a public speech. These people are people for whom $15 is not a big deal. They're not the teenagers buying games for the most part who are much more cash strapped and are much more cash conscious. These folks think $15, especially the video house professionals, they think $15 is a bargain because they used to spend $500 on a teleprompter setup. So this is much cheaper. Therefore, they're happy to pay any price we set, kind of. We don't know yet. We're going to be raising the price again to $20 soon, and we'll see what happens. Because why not? You know, and this is what I'm finding is so few of us are willing to take that experiment. What's the worst that can happen? Okay, you'll have fewer sales for a short while, then you just back it off, right? We're allowed to change our price. We're allowed to make these experimentations, but instead we listen to the kind of conventional wisdom that basically just keeps saying that no one wants to spend money on apps, nobody wants to spend money on apps, and we get into that echo chamber, and next thing you know, we start believing it. I want to talk about paid upgrades for a second, because this is a new problem that's coming up. Well, it's not a new problem, but it's a problem that we're all finally having to face, especially on the iOS store. At least with Google, with Android, you folks have a lot more pricing options than we do. But in the App Store, in case you don't know, I'm not allowed to have an upgrade price. So if you bought my app 3 years ago and I release a new version, it's free for you forever, right? Making money from a person once is not a good way to start, to have a business survive for a long time. Sooner or later, the entire world who wants a teleprompter is going to own it. And we're going to run out of customers, right? So we need a way for the people who have already bought our app to pay us again somehow. And most of them are dying to do that, believe it or not. Most of them are happy to do that, but we can't give them a way to do that easily. The only way that Apple's given us to do this is to basically create an entirely new SKU, a new app, call it Teleprompter Plus 3, and basically make everyone go buy it again at full price. So we could have a sale temporarily, but then that lets people who aren't, there's no way to reward loyal customers, in other words. And this has been part of the software world forever. So this is a huge shift, and it's been a huge problem for us. But it's interesting, when you go premium with your app, you run into fewer problems with this than people who don't. This is an example of two apps that recently did what I just described on the App Store. They recently got rid of their old version, made a brand new app, and made all their customers buy it again, okay? Now, this is clear, and it's a simple to-do list app. It's very elegant. It's wonderful. It was very popular last year, and it costs $2.99. This app over here is called OmniFocus, and this is the OmniFocus 2. And it is sort of a to-do list on steroids, right? It works with the whole getting things done system, and it does all kinds of really, really incredible stuff, syncs back and all these other things. But that app is $19.99 on the iPhone, which is pretty expensive for an iPhone app. And so both of these apps made all their customers buy the new, if you want the new version, this is right when iOS 7 came out, so it was like if you want the fancy new look and feel, and they added a lot of new features as well, they said, well, you're going to have to pay again, okay? Which of these two sets, the people who paid $2.99 or the people who paid $19.99, right? Faced with having to pay $2.99 again or with having to pay $19.99 again, which set of customers do you think complained the most? The $2.99 customers, right? Why? Because $2.99 customers are $2.99 customers. They're cost conscious. They're worried about price. They're angry that they have to spend $3 again. How dare you charge me again for something I use every day? Right? That it took you months and years. People don't know how much it costs us to build software. We can't make that argument. The whole, it's more expensive to go to Starbucks argument does not work with our audience because people in general have no idea how software is created. All they see is the value of the app. And someone who only paid $2.99 only sees that they're getting $2.99 value out of that app. They're in the dollar store. They're buying something that's throwaway. Whereas someone over here who paid $19.99 finds this app indispensable and would gladly pay them $20 every year to get it again. Okay, so when you go premium, you're in much better shape to be able to pull this off, I hope, because this is what we're going to do in a few months when we release our next version of Teleprompter Plus. We finally came to the decision that we're going to release this as a brand new app, and our customers will pay us again, and I'm sure they will all be excited and happy to do that when they see all the crazy, incredible new features that went into this as well. Obviously, this isn't just a polish. This isn't just, oh, we're reskinning it to look right in iOS 7. We're actually adding tons of features that our customers have been asking us for. So you do have to work at this. You can't just willy-nilly charge whatever you want. Customers aren't stupid. Another good thing, or another good reason why you want to think about going premium is your marketing. For starters, because you're making more per sale, right, you are going to recoup your marketing costs faster. The ad costs the same regardless of how much I'm selling my app for. So an ad that cost me a couple $1,000s is now going to make its money back with fewer sales. You also, with your marketing, can target a much smaller audience because you're not going for everyone on the App Store, so you don't have to blanket every possible outlet with advertising. You can reach just those places like audiovisual blogs and other types of websites that cater to the particular market that your app deals with. Okay, so I mean, the idea behind premium is that you're not fighting over the same scraps of crumbs. You're really looking for a niche that you can exploit, that you can go in there, solve the problem in a different way or a better way than someone else has, charge a premium for that solution, and make your lifestyle business happen. Now, I don't want to sit here and pretend that it's going to be easy. So there are downsides to this. For starters, you have to solve the big problems. Your app can't be something really tiny and simple, like my aspect ratio calculator. Okay, I get away with charging $5 for that, and it sells okay. I'm never going to be able to live on that because that app doesn't do enough. I'd argue it's worth a lot more than $5, but it's still, the App Store is the App Store. We have to deal with the pricing considerations of the market the best we can. So you do have to solve the big problems, and that means going after much more complicated, much more rich, much more feature-embedded software. Right? The time when on mobile we were just making simple weather apps is kind of over. You can do it. You can do it for fun. You can build some apps. You can make some money. If it's a side business, that's fine. But if you really want to make a living on an app, then we're getting to the point, I think, where, and if you want to charge premium price, you really need to solve the bigger problems. Okay? And that means a lot more work for you in the long run. You're going to feel like you're swimming upstream all the time. Not only is every article you read about going to tell you how stupid you are for charging more than free, not only are you going to be constantly bombarded with all your friends telling you how stupid you are, and then you show them your sales, and then you're like, but it's just a constant, and that will eat away at your soul. You will start thinking like, oh, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I could be doing better if this went cheaper. Maybe I'm missing out on something here, some important point. It's a hard way to do business to constantly feel like everyone thinks you're an idiot, okay? But you also have to give it time as well. You can't jump in there, put your app at $10, and when it doesn't sell a bazillion copies on day one, immediately drop it down to 99 cents. I've seen people do that. They say, see, it doesn't work. Well, you didn't establish anything, right? You have to create that brand. The Apple Store, Burberry, these high-end brands, Tiffany's, they didn't become Tiffany's overnight. They had to build that over time. And that takes more work than you've probably ever had to do in your life. It's probably way worse than working in an office. You're going to get dirty, and you're going to need a team of people in most cases. I think these bigger apps, the ones that go after Photoshop, the ones that are going after Maya, the ones that are, these big apps that are solving big problems on mobile are going to require more than one person. We've already heard many times probably by now that you should hire a designer. Well, you probably hire a salesman and a marketing person and a few other people as well, or at least a support person once you start getting in lots of support calls. Your company's going to have to grow. Remember I said before that ideal company number was 3 for us? We're starting to reconsider that, because, ultimately there's too much for only a couple people to do to really make this work. So you do have to think about your long-term growth as well. But you are building a business. And this is possible, and no matter how many people try to tell me it's not possible, I just keep telling them that I'm doing it, so it must be possible. Okay, so you have to believe that, and you have to keep working towards it. And so a few other tips I can impart along the way for building this if you want to make this work. And some of these might be considered negatives. I don't really consider negatives, but also maybe a little unpleasant for most of us. You have to be a salesman, okay, until you can hire a salesman. Usually, most of us, I'm guessing, most of us who are developers in here, designers, we usually don't like the sales guy. We didn't go to the Friday night parties at the bars with the sales guy usually. In high school and college, we didn't hang out with the sales guy. We always thought that there was some slimy, weird thing going on with that person, and we didn't want anything to do with them because they were just going to make us buy insurance or some crazy thing. All right, we avoid the sales guy naturally. But then suddenly when you open your own business, you have to become that guy. All right, and that really, what most of us do as a reaction to that is we refuse to do it. I'm not going to be that slime ball. They think of Alec Baldwin in this movie, and that's what they think sales is. Sales is an extremely important role in any company. What they do is unbelievably difficult, okay? And what they do is not necessarily unethical. Okay, it can be, you can treat it that way, but just offering someone a solution to a problem and saying, here's a product, well, that feeds families. There's nothing unethical about that. All right, so you have to be willing, until you can get a team big enough to start doing sales on their own, you kind of have to take over these duties yourself, and you kind of have to be willing to promote yourself. And it's something that's really hard for us to do. The developer community, the designer community, we're really shy. I think the designers are actually worse than the developers in this realm. Most of us seem aloof, and we seem like we're really stuck up, and we don't, like other people. That's because we're afraid. We're scared out of our minds 90% of the time, especially around each other. You ever see a group of designers hanging out together? Oh, I can't do it. I just go and hang out with you guys instead. I get a lot more contract work that way too, by the way. But yeah, designers are hard people to be around because we're all kind of, self-conscious about whether or not anyone takes us seriously, because all we do is draw the pretty pictures. That's what we're told all the time. But yeah, we understand we have an important role, but we wonder that other people don't necessarily view us that way. So you need to get out of your shell and be willing to promote what you do. And that means going out on Twitter, and it means when you're meeting people at conferences, and it means when you're out there in the world, not being afraid to say, hey, this is my app, I hope you like it, right? And trying to make that not a sales pitch in the slimy, sleazy way, but in a way that actually makes people aware. I can't tell you how many people, after I, very shyly said, well, yeah, I kind of made an app that kind of does calculations for ratios. How many people said, oh man, I need that? And they immediately went and bought it, and I thought, oh, that wasn't hard, right? So imagine if I did it with gusto, So you're building a reputation over time as a company, as a brand, as an entity, beyond any one app that you build. So over time, hopefully, you're going to have more than one app, and they're going to succeed. And so you need to create sort of, what is it that defines your company? We could all put into a few words what defines Google, what defines Apple, what defines Oracle. These are companies that have personalities and people know. You're not necessarily going to be that well known, but you still need to be known among some circles as something, and you want to define what that is. So you want to build a reputation over time. Another really important thing to do and to learn is that you need to play to your strengths. What do I mean by this? Let's say for a minute that you wanted to open a hamburger restaurant, right? People like hamburgers. So you think to yourself, okay, I'm going to make hamburgers, and I'm going to try to get people to come to my restaurant. And my biggest competitor is who? McDonald's, right? No, I hope not. If I compete with McDonald's, what's going to happen? I'm going to get crushed. Why? Because McDonald's has the lock on a couple of things. They're cheap, they're everywhere, and they're consistent. And consistent is actually the most important piece of that puzzle. It's not good, it's not high quality, but it's consistent. If I am an American visiting Budapest, I know I can go to McDonald's and get the same cheeseburger I got in Texas. All right, that means a lot to people, not me. I try to go out and be adventurous and a little bit, I hope, to eat something, that's more, correct for the particular place. I try to learn something when I eat food. But most people just want what they know, right? They're afraid to go try something new, and so they're going to run to McDonald's. Now, if I try to compete with that, can I be everywhere? Not right away. I'm going to have one restaurant, maybe tops, right? And there's probably going to be 5 McDonald's within walking distance of that restaurant because they're everywhere. I'm not going to be able to be consistent because I'm doing stuff by hand while they've got machines doing this stuff in factories all over the place, and they've got chemicals being manufactured in New Jersey that are making burgers actually taste like burgers, even though they're not. So I can't beat that, right? My best bet is to build the anti-McDonald's, is to go build a small little burger shop that specializes in grass-fed, organically, locally raised, all right, cows that have eaten nothing but purest grass grown and, with no chemicals of any kind. And I'm better off having customer service, right? I'm better off making, when you walk into this place, making you feel welcome and making you feel great, slowing things down a bit, because McDonald's is all about rushing and getting in and out, okay? If I want to compete, I need to go to where I can beat McDonald's. I can't consider McDonald's my competitor. I have to look at what can't McDonald's pull off. This happened with coffee as well in the last couple decades. Starbucks got around, and immediately in the States especially, there wasn't a real culture of coffee in the United States, I wouldn't say. Coffee was something you made with instant crystals in your house if you were a coffee drinker, or you would go to a diner and get some 50-cent crap coffee. There were cafes, they were around, but they were rare. We didn't have anywhere near the European sense of how amazing coffee is. All right, and as much as I hate Starbucks, they did that for America. They taught us that coffee is something you should like. But what they did wasn't to create good coffee. What they did was to kind of mimic every part of McDonald's except the price part. They're not cheap, but they are everywhere, and they are consistent. So I can go to Starbucks anywhere and get their latte, whatever that is, or their cappuccino, whatever crazy foamy soy milk thing that they're concocting nowadays with pumpkin spice. But this turned, like, everyone thought, okay, all these little cafes are doomed. There's no way the little shop that used to sell coffee, used to make espresso over here is going to survive. But the opposite ended up happening in America. Little shops like this started opening up everywhere. Why? Because while most people go to Starbucks and think, this is perfect, this is great, this is good enough for me, I like this, they'll drink it, and they'll drink it every day, and it's convenient, and they love it. There's that little 10%, right, or 2%, or whatever the percentage is, there's enough people out there that say, well, that's pretty good. I wonder if there's something better. I wonder if there's such a thing as coffee that's even better than this stuff. And they go seek it out. And when they do that, they find places like my favorite coffee place right now, which is Stumptown Roasters. This is on West 8th Avenue, or 8th Street, I should say, in New York. This is their second location in New York. They started in Oregon. And these guys are the anti-Starbucks. What they do is you walk in there, and for starters, there's no pumpkin spice latte, okay? There is coffee and lots of it, and you can pick your beans, and you can pick how those beans are going to be not only, what kind of roast or whatever, but you can also pick exactly how it's going to be brewed. So you say, I feel like a Chemex today. Or, no, just give me the French press. Or, okay, I think I'll have an AeroPress today. And they will sit there and make you, just you, a cup of coffee. And it's a little more expensive than Starbucks, but man, is it better. All right, I'm in here like 3 or 4 days a week. All right, and the other thing they did was they made it a place that's kind of nice to sit down and relax, which is really rare in New York. When space is so limited and it costs so much money as a lease on a business. If you're only charging people $4 or $5 for coffee, you need to get them into the store and get them out. Like right on their way to work, just pick it up. That's how Starbucks makes millions, right? These guys are making money, even though they're letting me sit there after I spend $4 for a coffee. I can sit there for 4 hours if I want to. They don't bug me. They got free Wi-Fi. It's the best air conditioning in New York in the middle of the summer. It was awesome. And I just fell in love with this place. And so what happens? I'm there 3 days a week, 4 days a week. I am their best customer. And I'm telling you about it so that when you go to New York, you'll be their best customer. So this worked because they didn't try to be Starbucks. They tried to do exactly the opposite of what Starbucks is doing. They're not consistent. Every coffee, no matter what barista you go in there, if you get a cappuccino today, tomorrow's cappuccino might be a little too strong, might be a little too much foam for your taste, because they're doing it by hand every day. That's the beauty of it, though, right? I know I'm weird. I know I'm the rare customer who wants that, but there are enough of me, obviously, to keep this place in business because they're opening more of them as we go. So I wouldn't be surprised if these guys ended up in every major city sometime in the next 10 years. They're doing a really great job. It doesn't scale as well as that burnt stuff at Starbucks, okay? But it doesn't have to because they're keeping to that premium quality. So how do we do this as app developers? How do we manage to beat our competition out there, beat the ones that are out there making apps with $1 million and $1 billion budgets and selling them for free, basically giving them away or having some kind of very cheap business model? One thing we could do is offer really great support for our products because that is kind of a rarity in the mobile world nowadays. Most of us are so busy trying to gain new customers that we're not thinking about our old customers. Why? Well, because we're not motivated to. They can't pay us again, right? They gave us money. We're done with them. We move on. And many apps get abandoned after the first couple of weeks when there aren't enough sales. So people will keep downloading those apps, and then they'll call or email, customer support, and they'll get no response. Why? Because you're 3 apps down the road by now. And so this is becoming a rare thing. And so when you can surprise someone by having really good support, when you actually respond to their inquiries, when you listen to their feedback requests and they say, hey, I'd really love it if this app did this, and you add that feature next week or next month, that makes a huge difference to their opinion of you as a company. And that's going to matter quite a bit because what you're doing is you're gaining their trust. People don't trust EA, right? The Electronic Arts. They don't trust these giant corporations making things. They trust 2- and 3-person companies that respond to them, okay? So you have that advantage. You should need to take advantage of it. Because ultimately, if you think about what sells apps in the long run, if you want to have that revenue stream that keeps rising instead of just going up real high and then dropping off the face of the earth, If you really think about what sells things in the long run, it's not your press. It's not getting featured by somebody in some article somewhere or on a particular app store page. That works. You'll make a lot of money for a short while, right? But the press, no matter how much they love your app, are not going to write about it every week. That's only going to last a little bit, right? In the long term, what sells apps is word of mouth, right? It's how do you download apps, right? You say, what are you guys using for Twitter these days? What do you use for weather app today? What do you use for this problem? And that's how we're selling teleprompter apps. Somebody who owns a video studio asked their friend in the other video studio, which app do you use for teleprompting? We see it on Twitter all the time. People are asking that question. And I don't even have to jump in and say, hey, here's my app, because it's answered before I can even get there. They're like, yeah, just get Teleprompter Plus. So we have become known as the one to get. That's a hard thing to accomplish. We got lucky. We were early into the store. There were a lot of other factors that worked that way. But we've sure as heck run with this concept, okay? So word of mouth is what sells apps. And the only way that you're going to get word of mouth in the long run is if people not only download your app, but actually use it. Okay, so you have to stop thinking about getting people just to download the app, because if they download the app and then don't use it, you got that one customer and that's it. I love this chart. Okay, so if we chart customer happiness here on the y-axis and we look at it over time, if you have an app that someone just kind of downloads, plays with it for a couple days, thought it was, hey, this is really cool, it's kind of fun, whatever, and then they put it on a page, like on page 3 of their home screen, and they forget it's there, and the next time they upgrade to a new phone, they don't even re-download it, that app is gone in their minds. And so when people say, hey, what apps are you using nowadays, they're not talking about your app, right? So you only got that customer for a couple of days to be a salesman for you, to go tell their friends about it. All right? Whereas if you build an app that actually solves a real world problem for that person, and it's something that they have and need every day, that they use all of the time, then they're going to keep talking about it because it's always on their phone and they're launching it on a regular basis. So another great stat to be tracking with your apps is not just how many downloads that I have, how much revenue am I making per sale, but what's my usage rate? How many people are launching the app on day 7? How many of them are launching it 3 weeks later? How many have launched it in the last 2 weeks? There's a big difference between how many people have bought the app and how many people are using the app. So if that number of how many people are still using it is really low, you're in trouble, right? So we need to build apps that actually are useful, as hard as that might sound. So you need to do that. And another thing that you need to do if you want to beat the other big names at their game is focus. Remember before I talked about we're kind of building niche products. We're building a solution to a particular problem, and that gives us an advantage over someone who's trying to build an app that everyone downloads. There's hundreds of millions of people who own cell phones at this point, right? Who own mobile phones. If you're trying to get them all to download your app, then your app, it can't be focused by definition. It has to be trying to reach everyone, which means it has to be trying to make everyone happy. And if you're trying to make everyone happy, you make no one happy. So what I can do with my app is I can focus on just the small number of people who I want to download my app. All the people who are just looking for a cheap thrill or a fun experience, or who want a really casual teleprompter that doesn't do much, can have the free ones that are out there. There are 40 of them, right? But we outsell every one of those every day because we don't care about what those users need. They're not our customers. We focus on the ones who do need our app, and therefore we build the features that just they need. When I built this Fin timer over here that's telling me that I've got about 14 minutes left, it's over there, right? And it's telling me exactly what I need to know with a glint of an eye. There are lots and lots of timer apps out there. Most of them don't do that. They're mostly made for people who, are timing how long they've been brewing their French press, or how long the chicken has been in the oven, or they're parking at a parking meter and they know they need 2 hours. So those are great apps for that. I decided to build an app that was specifically for a very small subset of people who need a timer. And so you can focus all of your efforts in a way that people who are trying to get everyone to download the app can't. And that's equally important. So keep that in mind as well. Another big thing that you can do as a small business trying to grow, and in a way that these large companies have a problem doing it, is you can become a part of the community. And what I mean by that is, you're here, right? We're at DevVox. You go to these conferences. That's great. That's a great first step. How many people did you talk to while you were here? Did you meet new people? Did you try to socialize? Did you go out to the social events afterward? You go into the party tonight? Are you going to make an effort? Are you going to hang with the same 5 people you already knew when you got here? Or are you going to try to make an effort to meet 5 new ones? I know this stuff is hard. I hate this stuff. I've been struggling all week with meeting new people. And it's one of the hardest things in the world for me because I'm a naturally introverted person, even though I like doing this, which is weird. But I don't, like around strangers, I get really nervous. My energy gets drained. I want to go to sleep by 10 o'clock. All right, so lots of beer helps. But the point is that you have to get out there in the community and try to make an effort to become known in the community, because the community of other developers is a great group of people to have promoting your app for you, to help get the word out about who you are. When people know who you are, then your apps are going to sell that much better. Everyone in this room knows who Bombing Brain is now. You didn't yesterday? Great. Right? Why? Because I'm standing here. All right? So get out there. You got topics to talk about. Get up here and talk. I encourage people to do this all the time. There aren't enough of us kind of, and maybe this isn't your thing and you wouldn't want to do it that way, but there are so many ways to build on this. You can write a blog. People out there are sharing their knowledge with open source software, whether they're answering questions on Stack Overflow and these other websites out there. They're in the dev forums. They're helping each other out. What you're doing is you're building a sense of camaraderie with each other. Often what happens with developers is we see each other as competition. I see it often with designers as well. Like, I might not get the job if I hang out with this other designer and he's better than me and this developer here hires him instead of me. I say, well, that's fine. Right? I need to hang out with as many people as possible and become everyone's friend, not enemy. We're not against each other. We're all in this together. And we're all trying to just build our own little businesses here and get things going. So that was one of the reasons why I created the podcast. Charles said, hey, do you want to do this? And one of our goals was to kind of give back to the community in some way. It was to be able to say, well, there are lots of podcasts out there talking about the technical stuff, and I'm nowhere near, good enough at the technical stuff to make a real contribution there. And there are lots of podcasts out there talking about the latest news in tech and talking about these new gadgets that are coming out and all these various topics. And we thought, well, we can't really contribute much there. But one way that we thought we might be helpful is to just share our knowledge of what it's like to be just a couple of guys at home trying to write apps and make a living out of it. And we bring on guests and we talk about legal issues and we talk about marketing issues and we talk about what you need to do with your website and all these other business things that we felt this was something we could contribute. And we get we get listeners every week, and it's been really good. We've had some special guests on as well. And it gets released every Monday, and that makes me happy. My blogging has gone down as a result because it's time consuming to do this. But again, it's my small way of contributing. And so I hope that you all will find a way to take part in community events, even your local community events, whether that be a meetup, some sort of developer meeting in your town, whatever it is. Make the effort to go ahead and do that in your life. So with that, I want to thank you all for having me here in the talk. My name is Joe again, and you can catch my podcast as well at releasenotes.tv, or you can check out my apps at Bombing Brain. If anyone has any questions, I wouldn't mind taking one or two. Yeah.
You hear a lot about patent trolls.
Mm-hmm.
How is that affecting?
So the question is about patent trolls and how is that affecting small businesses. It's a huge problem. I'm not going to lie to you. My co-host is running into issues, not with patents, but he's actually having trademark issues that I probably shouldn't be talking about publicly yet. But lots of us are getting sued by patent trolls. The good news is that the patent trolls are finally getting dumb enough to sue the bigger players. They're starting to go after the larger companies who have more money, which means they're going after people who have legal teams that could fight it. There's nothing you can do as a 1 or 2 or 3 person operation to fight a patent troll and win. It's really, really hard. You're not going to have enough money. They can bury you in millions and millions of dollars of fees. And so it's a disease, it's a scourge, it's a real problem. And right now, there have been efforts to try to band together to have sort of a group of people who could kind of have legal fees provided by kind of a consortium. That's a difficult thing. That's a difficult sell in the United States where I'm from, because a lot of people don't believe in banding together because we're idiots. So hopefully, though, we'll see the light on that, and we'll hopefully see more of that kind of thing. But my hope is that they will, companies like Lodsys and these other patent troll companies will get dumber and start going after the bigger players, and the bigger players will shut them down. I wish we were getting more support from the big, like the Googles and the Apples for it. They have their own legal issues. I can't imagine how many millions they're spending. But hopefully I'm hoping that laws will change and eventually make that a thing of the past, but I'm not confident it'll happen soon. Yeah.
How do you measure things like interest or the key points to find out whether you hit the right focus or what else did you say? All the kinds, how useful your app is. How do you measure it at the beginning? And if you have your first version, which tools or which ways you use when it shipped the first version, and so on. What kind of tools or methodologies do you use?
So what tools or methodologies do you use to measure things like how effective your app is or how many people are actually using the app and how much people like your app? We actually have just a little piece of snippet of code that basically every time the app gets launched, it tells us, hey, the app was launched, it was on this device, and they're running this operating system. Now, some people think, well, that's creepy, but it's totally anonymous and we're not collecting any data beyond that. You can collect more data than that if you want to, but then you have to really be careful about your privacy policy and make sure that you're letting your customers know. And in many cases, it's an opt-in kind of thing where you can say, do you want to send reports back to the company based on this stuff? And a lot of people say no, but the other people will. We also have a lot of, fortunately, the people who are unhappy with the app are louder than the ones who are happy with it. I say fortunately instead of unfortunately because although that sucks to listen to that negative feedback, those folks are really vocal, and in many, many cases, you might think they hate you, but really they want to use the app badly. And what that means is you can fix the problems that they're telling you about. So yeah, I mean, when you build your 1.0 and you put your 1.0 out there, it's your best guess as to what people want. We don't do a lot of market research. The Apple App Store is really hard to do any kind of A/B testing. So like it's very difficult for us to know before that version 1 goes out whether or not we've got the right formula. But we can find out from whoever does buy it then what needs to change. And Teleprompter Plus has changed dramatically since we first launched it. We've added so many things to it. And yeah, you get into feature creep and problems with it, but no, these were what professionals were telling us. We can't use this app right now for our day-to-day business because it lacks this. Well, that's a real issue, and if I can fix that, then now everyone else who has that same problem will go buy it. So we don't do enough market research. We don't do enough of those kinds of statistical arrangements, but we do collect some data, and we listen to our customers. One of the things you'll find, like in our reviews for our apps, is a lot of our customers will say, I can't believe I wrote to the developer and they fixed the problem. I'm like, really? You couldn't believe that? Like, that's not the norm. But it isn't, and people get really, really happy about it. And so they constantly write to us about how great our support is, which is really great. I don't do the support myself, so I have to give props to Tim and Gene for that one. And Tim Mosley has been working on the support for the longest. And he's just so much better at being nice than I am. They won't let me do support because it's real hard for me to just say, no, you idiot, you're doing it wrong. And instead just go, oh, that's very nice. Thank you for your feedback. If you read the manual, we actually wrote manuals for our apps. I made them, there's a PDF version, there's also an iBooks version. So you can download like a 100-page manual that I maintain. I'm gonna have to rewrite it all for this new version. And it sounds crazy to spend all that time, but it's amazing how much that saves in customer support. We can't measure that because they're the people who aren't contacting us. But it is great to be able to refer to that. So when someone says, hey, why doesn't your thing do this? Well, if you look on page 47 of the manual, it actually does tell you you can do this. Isn't that great? And next time you have a problem, check out that manual. But either way, like you're providing as many resources as you can. We're not active enough on Twitter. We're not active enough on the social media. I think our audience isn't particularly engaged there as much as many other products would be, but that's the best we can do with that. Are there any other questions? I don't want to hold everyone up on their lunch, but you can feel free to. Okay, well, if anyone has any questions or you want to talk to me privately or you don't want to do it out here in this forum, I will be around, so please feel free to do that. And I really, really appreciate your attention, and thank you. Thanks again, Michael, for having me.